once again, everyone. So, probably on everybody's mind, the kind of most recent game release was Elden Ring, which, in case you aren't familiar with the Dark Souls series or the Soulsborne series in general, is a well of interesting movesets for various different weapons. And also, fun detail, there's no mocap, actually. It's all animated, which means that you can get a lot of really cool stuff, and the characters move in an almost particular way. It's a deep well of stuff, and I've wanted to cover Dark Souls before, both because of viewer request and also because there's just a lot of possibility. But I kind of staved off of it for the longest time because, frankly, I didn't play the games. I played the third one a little bit, but never really got too far into it. But with Elden Ring, I have been really into it, and as such, I decided, hey, let's dive in and just kind of take interesting weapons as I find them. So I haven't been playing for that long. This will probably be a long-running series. Don't worry, I'm going to tackle other games as well, or scenes or what have you in between this, but I'm probably going to be putting out a couple of these over the course of the next several months. So for starting off with, there are three main weapons that I want to be covering, one of which is going to get its own video, that being the Great Epee, because it's really fun. Today I'm going to be covering the Dagger moveset and the Straightsword moveset. So, important thing is that for the dagger, it seems to be just a standard cross-held dagger. That's a broad category. There are going to be other special weapons here and there, but this is just the default option. We're not going to really see any guards taken. It's instead going to be just a sort of general resting position, and then attacks will spawn out of it. When you lock onto an enemy, you kind of just keep yourself open or things along those lines as you move around, and then proceed to dodge roll. So, for our first series of attacks is going to be our light attacks with one hand on the weapon, as you can two-hand everything in the game, which is really freaking cool. So for our first attacks are just going to be our lights. It's just going to be basically a series of left-right slashes with passing steps. So right, left, and you just do 4 of those pretty much. Nothing too exciting. Then following that bit, if you keep attacking, we're then going to have 2 descending cuts. So all in all, if you just keep light attacking, it's going to be right, left, down, down. Nothing too complicated, really. I like the little mix-up that they throw in with the added angle. Wish we could see more light stab attacks, but we'll get to that again in a minute. So now, here's from the side, and with these, it is all passing steps, so just right, left, down, down. Nothing crazy. Now, it should be noted, the dagger's held in your left hand. You can still attack with it, but you won't do passing steps anymore. Instead, you'll do little, basically goofy steps, or at simple advances, boom, boom, and you will just throw left and right. And that's actually something I've been using quite a bit with my build. Now, when it comes to the heavy attacks, that's where we're going to see something a little bit different. Instead, what's going to happen, let me double check my notes. There's a lot of things I need to cover here. There we go. That's where we're going to get some crossbody movement going. So, for the heavy attacks, it's going to be, now what I mean by crossbody here is normally, and I'm even standing a little bit more profiled than the character does, normally if you do a step, you move with your core. Crossbodying is when you move against your core. It's not necessarily a terrible idea in some situations, especially if you're looking to apply wedge, but on pure attack, it's a little bit strange. However, you do see it crop up a decent amount in choreography, and also real-life fighting, to be fair. So, that's going to be heavy, heavy. Pretty straightforward. Go ahead and show it from the other side. So, heavy, heavy. And then you're just back in the guard. Nothing too crazy. Now, when we get into two-handing it, that's where I'm going to see something just a little bit different. So for the two-hand, there's only going to be 2 attacks, and those are going to be, yes. First off, for the light attacks, for the two-handed but light attack section, we're going to see something a little bit strange. It looks really funky with a small dagger, but it's a pretty good moveset overall. It might look better with some of the bigger daggers. But for two-handing it, he's just going to, from here, bring his hand over and just kind of hold it here. It's going to be up, up, down, down, up, and then we're going to get a loaded up. So what I mean by loaded is he's really going to kind of crouch down and push off of that final shot. So here's that from the side. Now when it comes to the heavy attacks with two hands, that's when we're going to see something a little bit different. I really like these actually. So for the heavy attack, for our first action, we're going to pass forward with our left foot with a thrust from below. So it's going to be here, relatively low, held kind of to the side, and you actually see the hand kind of move onto the pommel to reinforce this a little bit. So here's that from both sides, staying in guard, boom, and then you can relax again, and then same thing other side, boom, back to guard, or rest rather. Now if you attack twice, then we're going to see a grip switch. And I really like the detailing in this in that it's not immediate. Most times when there's a grip switch in between ice pick and sword grip, it happens almost instantaneously. And not that you can't get really, really fluid, much more fluid than I am at doing a grip switch, but it does need to take a bit of time to get that dagger around, and you don't want to be moving too fast when you do that, because if you get caught in between, that now goes from a good attack to possibly your dagger spinning out of your hand. So what we're going to see is the first attack is going to be, like I said, launch, then it's going to be lifting, and we see the arm come up and almost like you're guarding. So if you're wearing, a lot of the sets are asymmetrical, so there is usually a gauntlet on the left hand. It's almost like you're guarding your head, and then you're going to pass forward with this attack that goes through, then you're going to switch it back, then you stand back and guard. So here's that now from the side. So our first attack, boom, we're going to switch, move the hand up to guard, follow through with our attack, and then you're just back standing. One more time this way. So fire, switch the grip, guard the head, attack, back to guard. So overall, pretty fun, pretty interesting. I really like it. I think it's pretty cool. And it's probably going to look a little better, especially in the two-handed stuff, with other daggers down the line. Maybe I'll do a dagger build at some point. That actually sounds like a lot of fun. I have also seen bigger, more cut-oriented knives, so they probably had that in mind, but so far at least, pretty fun. Now, if we move up, the other kind of weapon I've been playing around with since I started as, what are they called? I started basically as a faith build, the sort of priesty one, but more like the Inquisitor one. I can't remember what they're called off the top of my head. I will put it in the description since I cannot remember. The ones in the long black cloaks. Either way, for straight sword, you're going to see a variety of swords that fall under this category. Most of them are going to be either arming swords or long swords, and that's kind of their main thing. The sword that I started off with default is basically this with just a little bit more grip. So one-handing and two-handing it looks great. For this, the moveset is not going to change across them, so you could also use a long sword for this. Wouldn't really matter. But point being, you have one-handed and two-handed attacks. So for our first combination, it is going to be, we're going to pass with all of these. It's going to be down, across, down. Then from there, we're going to go ahead and come over our other shoulder, down. Then we're going to load and come down once more. So here's that again. Down, across, down, down from left, loaded, down. Now it should also be noted that a lot of these hits do strike the floor, as they are definitely swinging through and it'll actually throw up sparks, which I think is kind of a nice detail in all the Dark Souls games. Frankly, a lot of the times you're in desperate fighting situations. You're not fighting all that cleanly. Your back is against the wall is, I believe, one of the intended design features of the game. So I kind of like that it throws in that desperation. I wish it would happen more when the weapons touch each other or when you hit an enemy. But here's that again from the side. It's going to be down, across, down, down from left, loaded down, and then we're done. Now, when it comes to two-handing your attacks, that's going to get a little bit more boring. It's going to be just across, across. Nothing really to write home about, pretty standard. Here's that from the side, across, across. Nothing amazing. Now then, when we move into the two-handed grip, that's when we're going to see slight alteration in between the first and second. So the pattern is going to be relatively similar. It's going to be down, up, down, down from left, loaded, down. And there is some subtle changes here. So With the first pattern, we came down and then we threw a horizontal blow basically underneath the arm. This also looks quite good if you have a shield. When you have two hands in the blade though, rather than throwing a horizontal, it does become a much more sheer strike from below, much more of a proper undercut, which I think is a nice detailing. On that final shot, rather than opening the body and bringing the weight down quite in the same way, we instead are going to see a slight release on the pommel and more bringing the sword up into guard and passing off of that. I like it because it shows the activation on the other side of the hand and it's really adding to the hit. Whereas before we were just using momentum of our right arm, now we see that pull with the left hand to add more power. So here's that now. I'll go ahead and face this way from the side. So two-hand grip, down, up, down, down, loaded, down, and then just back in the guard. So pretty cool. Now let's talk about the fun bonus stuff. So every weapon also has, well, one, they're weapon arts, but that's probably going to be a video in and of itself. But in regards to every weapon, you also get a special attack. And for the straight swords, you get two that are really, really cool. So to charge your special attack, you hold the heavy attack button from left hand while two-handing, and you'll move into what is basically in between Schlussel and Fenestra. It's going to be the body turns back and the blade is presented forward. And from here, if you do a heavy or light, you will do two different attacks. So for the light attack, what we're going to see is he's going to pull on that pommel and do a nice loaded cut from below. And I mean, there's a lot of engagement on this left side. Even though it's a light attack, it's going to be dropping and then pulling up through that attack. Here's it on the other side. Pretty cool. And then if you do a heavy instead, that's where we're going to see a thrust. This is actually a thrust I like quite a bit. So you're in guard, you load. What's going to happen is there's going to be a little bit of gathering steps. You're going to step, step, push. And you're going to go across your body and forward so that now the edge is toward the inside. And this thrust very much is going up toward a higher target. So you're kind of goring as you go. So here's that again. You're going to be step, step, gore with a nice kind of deep lunge. Here's that going the other way. Step, step, gore. So, overall, a pretty cool moveset. I think it's a nice amount of detailing, and if you block, just do this. But I think there's a nice amount of diversity in it. I've always really liked how in the Dark Souls games, regardless of what sword you're using, you can see the character generating power from their stance or from their movement. And certainly if we get into some of the bigger weapons, we'll talk about that even more. If you have any suggestions for weapons, bear in mind I'd like to find them in game first so I can really study them. But if you have any suggestions, by all means, put them below as long as they're possible. I'm not going to be able to do any of the ones where I like dig my sword to the ground and flip myself backwards. I'm just not that skilled. But if you have suggestions, by all means, put them down. But again, I really like all the movesets that are present in all the Soulsborne games. They show good power generation. They show a lot of thought put into the attacks, and some of them can really show a lot of variation and clearly took inspiration from historical techniques, which is really cool to see, especially considering that when the first Dark Souls came out, or for that matter, the first Demon Souls came out, a lot of people still thought these were just blunted clubs rather than proper swords. So it's nice to see the care given to the Western arsenal of weapons as well as the Eastern one. But either way though, that's going to finish off the first video. Like I said, I will also be tackling the Great Epee. I just need to spend a little more time researching it, and this video is long enough as it is, so expect that soon. But otherwise though, thank you very, very much for watching, and we will go over some other movesets another time.